All right, all right. So here's how I started this episode topic. I was putting myself in the shoes of someone, a young person probably, maybe someone who's already started their career, who's thinking, if I wanted to retire early, what steps do I need to take? And so they sit down at their computer and they type into Google what I need to do to retire early. And I actually used ChatGPT to run this analysis for us. And I
So this is computer assisted.
this is computer assisted, and I wanted to see what the computer would tell me. And then obviously having three advisors here on the podcast, I thought we could kind of go through what it is that ChatGPT told us that we needed to do. Jeremiah, you say on a regular basis in our meetings that when you go to type in a financial topic, it's not that you're not going to receive any information. It's that you're going to just get a tidal wave of information. It's really hard to decipher what is valuable to you and to your circumstance. So
Right.
that kind of tees us up for this week. So, gentlemen, if you want to start us off, what are some things that ChatGPT told us that we need to do if we want to retire early?
Yeah.
What I thought was really interesting is that a lot of the information that came out it symbolizes or it mirrors what we do with clients at that initial meeting onset, right?
Yeah.
That was a very some broad buckets. So the very first one said set clear goals, and what does that mean? What I liked about the question is when someone says I want to retire early, they could mean I want to sit on a porch at 45 and just rock, and that's it. Some could say no, I want to travel the world. I want to stop working and I want to do other stuff. And so retire early, could mean so many things to different people. So I think the first item is set clear goals is really useful. Really vision what you want to do. And a lot of our clients will walk through even the process of almost being able to describe it in such detail that you can taste it. Like, I'm going to be doing this. I'm going to be feeling these things. I'm going to be concerned about this. I'm going to not be concerned about this. Like really getting them to paint a picture for themselves of what they see retirement looking like.
Yeah.
And then you can work backwards, that vision of a future. Wow. Okay. That's now exciting to put some wheels to, but they said basically of, set clear goals and define what early retirement means to you. I think that's a great first step,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Because I think some people arrive at this thought, I'd like to retire early, from two different perspectives. They might have a plan for retirement. Here's what I would do with my free time. It might mean moving into a different job that they've always wanted to do, less for the money and more just for whatever the job actually is. They might have also arrived at this question because they're so tired or frustrated or burnt out from the current job that they have. And those have two separate vision and goals connected to them. So I actually think it's really important to walk through that first step, especially if you're managing your finances with a spouse or a partner, because their goal and vision, although it's being communicated the same, might be in entirely different perspective that brought them to that point.
Right. Again, I think when somebody says I want to retire, I want to be able. What I'm really hearing, I guess, the feedback that comes to me is that I want to be financially independent, and I want to be able to make my choices with not having to be dependent upon an employment or a job or whatever. But I have that total independence to be able to make those choices and work forward from there. That's what I'm hearing. So retirement, to me, I guess that conjures up different images in my head. Financial independence tells me I want to be able to do what I want to do. I want to be totally independent, right?
Right. And
That's
when I
good.
think of financial independence, I think of kind of the second thing that it recommended, which second and third, to calculate your expenses and create a budget, which are typically two things that we do when we're starting to build a plan for our clients. We don't like to always call it a budget. We like to call it a spending plan. But when I think about financial independence, my mind goes to recurring liabilities or debt. And financial independence, I think, oftentimes is predicated on paying off debt.
Yeah, paying off or dealing with it or making a plan for it. Yeah, the items 2, 3, and 4 that the ChatGPT gave us, it was calculate your expenses, create a budget, and increase your savings rate. And I think it started off in my mind great. Hey, get some visibility on your expenses, deal with some debt, create a budget so you know what you're doing. But I think it kind of took a nosedive in my mind because it very jumped into track your spending and find areas to save. And what I think this is gearing you to is saying, hey, if you want to retire early, bust out the top ramen. Let's do it. And for a lot of people, that's not what they're looking for. That's not what they're willing to do. Right. It's just to say, hey, whatever you're doing it wrong. Stop buying the latte, go buy top ramen. If you do that for 20 years, you're going to be able to retire. And that's not realistic for most anybody, especially if they have kids or they have a life that they want to enjoy along the ride. Because retiring early, depending on their age, still may be a 10, 15-year journey from here to there.
I think it's the difference between discipline and sacrifice. If you discipline yourself under budget, you're not spending more in a certain category than you should be. But sacrifice means that you're buying secondhand clothes, you're not doing coffee, you're not going out to dinner. There's a difference in, again, what conjures up in my mind is spending wisely versus just scrimping, being somebody who just doesn't enjoy life at all for that ultimate goal of having money. Right.
Well, and it's like, what's going to happen when they do achieve that goal, right? We have so many clients that have lived their life sacrificing, the opposite of spending lavishly. They've been such tightwads. I hate to use that word, that when they finally do achieve financial independence, they don't even know what that looks like. They still feel hamstrung by that idea of living so tightly that they don't actually know how to enjoy the earnings that they've made and how they can experience, their dreams, their goals, et cetera. They're still apprehensive to do so.
Yeah. And I think there's a saying, I think it plays to finance as well as working out. The very best workout is the one that you do. Right. And I think the very best budget is the one that you can stick to. And so think about someone in a physical sense saying, hey, I'm going to get in shape this January. I'm only going to eat broccoli and chicken. That's it. I'm going to work out, 7 days a week. Man, is that sustainable? No, they're going to burn out, and it's not going to be a real path for them. Whereas if somebody says, hey, I'm going to eat healthy, I'm going to make a reasonable effort to get to the gym in a way that fits for my life, that could be life-changing if they do it consistently. Same with your finances, right? Doing something for 1 month that's really extreme, not that helpful. But if you can find a lifestyle that is really functional. So I think 2, 3, and 4, it's a good sentiment, but I think kind of nosedives there.
Well, and I would even go back to number 1 about setting your goals, setting both short-term, intermediate, and long-term goals. That helps drive you towards certain habits, not necessarily this just purely martyrdom, sacrificial lifestyle for your entire life eating top ramen. But, even in our family with young kids, we can rally our kids around a short-term goal. Hey, we want to save our pennies because we want to go on this vacation. We want to save our pennies because we want to go to Disneyland again, or whatever it is. And, that can indicate certain habits. And that's going to help you when you get the Friday night munchies to continue with
the Stick
diet.
With your plan. That's right. So number 5 on this list is perhaps my favorite and perhaps the worst. I'm not sure. So it's talked about, set your goals, figure out your budget, and then it says invest wisely, period. I think that's such a great comment.
Heck does that mean?
What does that mean?
Of course, invest wisely. It goes on. It says, think about stocks and bonds and real estate. Think about diversifying. Great comments, right? Invest wisely. Absolutely, do that. But what I think is so open is just this idea that what is wise, what is wisdom. We even had clients or friends we've spoken with that will go the next level to say, well, can I just buy the S&P 500? Isn't that a decent thing to do? And it's one of those it's better than not buying it. It's not horrible, but when we use kind of a matrix as the risk, the standard deviation on the bottom, and then the return on the side. And we do a dot plot of different assets just to kind of illustrate the risk and the reward you're taking on for each asset. And it's on a regular basis, we throw the S&P 500 in there, and man, it gets a great return and it's got a great risk, in the sense of a large risk, right? And so there's a lot of clients when they think of investing wisely, you can get returns that are similar to the S&P 500, but good gosh, you can bring down the risk, or you can move up the returns and you can have similar risk. The idea of wisely, that's where there's some real work. And people don't say, hey, well, if they think, hey, this is easy, just look at the landscape of how many investment advisors and funds and people are out there. There's a lot of different ideas, approaches, concepts, how to invest wisely. So I just think it's such a huge bucket of course, invest wisely, but man, there's so much more detail that's needed.
And I think really I would put an addendum to that is that everybody has a bias. What is it that they invest in that they feel the most comfortable, or they feel like this is what's going to be that for them? Recently we've heard, obviously crypto, we've heard gold, silver, commodities, other other things. Some people would say because of all the hostilities in the world, we ought to be investing in defense. I mean, there's a bias that comes about, and you can tell where people are leaning towards. And oftentimes, I mean, I haven't seen anybody yet that's hit it on the mark. In other words, to buy and sell perfectly. It just doesn't work. And the best of investors will tell you you can't time the market, but people have biases. They believe that they can. They believe that they have this inherent knowledge, and I'll just figure it out as I go. Well, life happens. You know, you've got your family, your business, your job, and you're going to spend how many minutes you have left in the day to figure out exactly what investments you're supposed to hold on to.
Right.
It just doesn't work that well, you know?
Right. And I think what's interesting too is that the landscape is always changing.
Yep.
So we've had clients before that say like, yeah, my grandfather just told me that I should always hold the S&P 500 or I should always be well diversified or, and they're hanging on to some of this older wisdom, which some of it may still apply. But we were just having a conversation this week with one of the investment managers that we work with regarding the bond market, and it has performed in a volatile last 12 to 18 months where interest rates have fluctuated quite drastically. And so we're seeing a lot of changes in the bond market. And the irony is bonds used to always represent kind of the low risk fixed income strategy within a portfolio. And now we're actually finding that they're adding risk to the portfolio. So what was traditional wisdom, let's say you had a 70-30 mix up or a 60-40, and that would represent your ratio of bonds to equities. And now that same risk and return profile is maybe not as it was before because of the interest rate fluctuation. And so the landscape is always changing. So I think when you look at invest wisely, that's a category where I don't know what amount of research could arrive you at the right philosophy for your portfolio. There's a lot of robust information out there.
So I think the comment that came off of the most frequent meeting that we had with one of the key investment advisors that we work with, investment advisors, he said, like, for example, a 60-40, which is a normal kind of a standard. You invest 60% of your money in equities and 40% of your money in bonds. And so his comment, which I felt was demonstrated his wisdom, which equities, which bonds. And so it's not, most people go, okay, I just want a 60-40. Well, what makes up your 60% and what makes up your 40%? And there's a myriad of differences between what you're available. I mean, going back to your comment that you made, Jeremiah, there is thousands and thousands of choices out there that you can make for your investment. Are you going to have time to sort that out? And do you have the ability to sort that out, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say the majority of our clients are exceedingly hardworking, exceedingly bright. And if they want to spend all day in front of a computer, they can make some decent investment choices, but they have a life to live, and we're coming alongside to, to take that burden from them and give them some specialized knowledge that we have. So I think it's a bit of both. And so I think that's well said. Mm-hmm. So looking at this list, the other one that I like here a lot is it says make an emergency fund, which we tell almost every client, to make sure that that's part of their life. But it says maintain a robust emergency fund to cover unexpected expenses.
Again, what does that mean?
Right?
What does robust mean?
I mean, robust could be a big number. I mean, $100,000 would be a very robust emergency fund. But you think about someone wanting to retire early, if they we'll just use $100,000. If they take $100,000 of their assets, set it on the sidelines in an emergency fund that's quickly accessible, highly liquid, not really earning much money, they are really slowing themselves down. On the flip side, if they put only $1,000 in that emergency fund and say, well, I'm here for a small emergency, I would say most people's lives, $1,000 is good to have, but it's not enough. It's not enough to allow you to weather a reasonably probable storm. I mean, you run over something weird and your tires go out. 4 tires could be more than $1,000. Like, having some real money. And we talk a lot with our clients that there's rules of thumb out there, perhaps. But if you're a business owner and you might have to forego your income to float payroll if you have a bad month, well, then your personal emergency fund needs to be different than if you're someone who is a W-2 employee and you also have rental income coming from a rental that you have. I mean, it is very customized of what is a reasonable amount that could keep you floating. And recently, we even had clients splitting what I would call their emergency funds into 2 buckets. One being, making zero and just in a savings account, or I guess 0.01 of interest, and it's readily available. But then a second
Mm-hmm.
sleeve that is still accessible, but it's stable money. It's in short-term treasuries. It's in something that they need it. They can get it in 3 or 4 days, but it allows them to have a little bit of growth. So again, it's a nice sentiment. You need an emergency fund, but the details of how much and where you hold it, I mean, that's some really important choices you need to make.
Yeah, let's talk about, I mean, one of the things that comes to mind, obviously, the expenses that you don't expect, but some that you anticipate are when you sign up for your medical plan and you want to reduce the cost of your medical plan. So you pick a high deductible plan option. Our listeners, there's a variety of obviously different plans out there. So this may or may not apply to you, but all of a sudden there could be an emergency event that happens and that high deductible comes due. And, that's a good indication of, do you have the emergency funds available to meet that obligation? So, a general rule of thumb is 3 to 6 months of your reoccurring expenses is kind of a guideline. But the answer is it depends. It depends on what your goals are. To your point, Jeremiah, if you're wanting to retire early, you want to put your money to work for you. So you don't want it just sitting there earning nothing. That's helpful for you in terms of, short-term liabilities, extra expenses that come up, but it's not going to be helpful for you to reach that goal.
Right.
Yeah. And Randy, you've had clients in the past that are retired, they've already retired. They're in that phase of life and they still want to have good exposure to equities. They still want to be fully invested, but they're a little concerned about fluctuation. So you've had some clients that put 2, maybe even 3 years of living expenses in a very stable account with the
Yeah.
idea that whatever happens in the next 2 or 3 years, they're going to stay invested in their stocks. And for someone who's younger, that's unrealistic, right? To have that kind of money. But you've had a few clients that's been very successful for their life.
Yeah. What I try to do is say you want to be bulletproof. So you want to enjoy the the investment returns that your portfolio should make, but also you want to have a reserve fund that when the market goes down, you're not panicked and you have enough cash, you have enough money, liquidity to deal with any kind of emergencies. And again, the comment you've heard me say again and again, debt is the killer. So, so oftentimes people step into retirement and they still have this mortgage or they still have this. I'm surprised how many people have a car payment, credit card payments, that kind of stuff. We want that to be zero, as close as possible to zero going into retirement. And then we want to build an adequate reserve liquid fund. Going back to your comments early, Jeremiah, you don't want to have everything just in the checking account, but we can stagger that money into different buckets so it can earn interest. And we've enjoyed some interest now that we've not been able to get for the last 10 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's great. That's great. As we look through some of these, one of them was interesting. One of the items they have is to stay flexible. And there's part of that I appreciate. We talk a lot about having plan A and plan B and what ifs, and we do that. But if someone really wants to retire early, maybe they don't want to be flexible. Maybe they want to be aggressive. Maybe they want to really lean into this. And, the first part of this had the idea of cut expenses, eat top ramen, you can do this. And then the end of it says, but be flexible, just react to whatever's coming. And I think it's a little bit of a mixed bag for real life, not AI generated, but in real life, you have to stay flexible. Life happens, things change. You want to have, we tell a lot of people, the sooner you make good choices, the sooner you have the freedom to do whatever you may want.
Right.
Which is great. And so you got to stay flexible. But I think with this one, if you're, being dramatic on cutting your budget and living a real compressed life, then to say, but I feel like going to the movies and you buy, movies for all your friends and you invite people and you buy the popcorn, all the things, man,
Right.
those are difficult to do. So when we talk about budgeting, we talk a lot about lining up your spending with your values. And if one of your values is to retire early, well, that helps inform a lot of choices. For most people, it is, hey, I want to live a life that I'm excited about, and I want to have a future that I'm excited about. And so it's a both and conversation of how do we make sure your resources cover everything you need now and set you up for a future you're excited about.
Right.
Yeah. So again, I think that, your budget issues, I think when we talk with people, we determine whether or not they are just Scrooge, they're eating 3-day-old bread or whatever. I don't know. And those that enjoy a steak every day. I mean, there's a balance between the two, but at the same point in time, there is a life to be lived, and you don't want to be so frugal, so miserly that you don't enjoy life. At the same point in time, you don't want to be so frivolous and you get a new car every year, you go out to restaurants all the time, that you have no adequate savings, that it's always been stripped out because you have no discipline in your spending. So there's a balance in that, right?
Yep.
Yep,
Big time.
absolutely. So I think the greatest irony of what ChatGPT gave us was that on the list of 11 things to do, number 11 is maybe consult with a financial advisor. Um, and so obviously we would move that up in terms of priority on the list. But, what I see from this list is obviously broad blanket advice. There are things that I don't see on this list that would be super valuable to someone who is really interested in retiring early. I don't see a Roth account. I don't see some tax strategy, planning. I don't. And so being able to consult with a financial advisor and set those clear goals and being able to identify how our finances can line up with those goals. What's realistic? What's probable? That's what we love to do. That's our sweet spot. And so I would definitely move that up, ChatGPT in the priority list.
Yeah. Well, the biggest group of people that I feel that come in to us is they're just pre-retirement. They're considering retiring. They're looking at that and they're in their 50s, 60s, and they know they've done well. They have good assets. They've lived a great life. They've probably, finished their family and they're in a good spot. But retirement is still just a black box. And the idea, will I have enough? Am I going to run out? What's this going to look like?
When do I take Social Security?
All those are big concerns. And I think, Laura, to your comment, putting some real planning, some real numbers, some real expectation on that is key. And what we said before, but I see all the time, is you'll have one spouse who tends to be a little more in charge of the finances. And often as they approach retirement, they feel the weight of this. I have to provide for my spouse. I have to provide for my family, and I have to get it right. Because if I get it wrong, oh man, we are in trouble. And the other spouse is saying, well, I trust you. You're going to do great. And they're saying, yep, I think we can do it. And they're both kind of looking at each other. I don't know. And man, after a couple of meetings of walking through with folks and say, here's exactly what it's going to look like for your finances when you're 85. When you're 87, when you're 92. And here's what happens if you need long-term care. And here's what happens. And we walk through these and put real numbers on them. And man, I love it. I've had a lot of spouses when they say, but I'm just not sure. And we say, well, what else could go wrong? And they're like, well, inflation. We say, yeah, let's do it. We add it to the plan. Well, what if someone gets hurt? Add that to the plan. What if we add all the what ifs and kind of stress test their plan? And it gets to a point where they all both look at it and say, oh yeah, that'd be the worst that could realistically happen. And we'd be fine.
And most likely the worst will not happen, right?
Most likely, yeah. So we wind back to the normal plan, but it's really healthy, I think, to run through that actual exercise of putting real numbers to real future scenarios so that you can get back to that confidence to say, yeah, we can take that trip this year. When I can't take a trip every year, but we could take the trip this year and we could take one in 3 years, and that's going to be so much fun. And let's really lean into our retirement. So yeah, I agree with you, Laura. Put that, consult a financial advisor. We're biased, right? We're financial advisors. But I think if you want real advice, if you have real questions, if you think that your life is really important, well, then take the steps to get that done. Bring someone into your life who can give you that confidence. And if it's us, that's wonderful. And if it's not, if it's somebody else, that's great too. I think it's key that people live into their finances with confidence.
Yep. Awesome. Well, that's about all the time we have today, but thanks so much for listening, folks.
Until next week, folks, may you grow in wisdom and knowledge. Thank you for listening.
We have a few more things to let you know about before we go. Podcast reviews really help us to serve more people and get this information into the hands of the people who need it. Please leave us a review. Even if it's not 5 stars, we welcome the feedback.
And we invite you to let us know what topics you would like to hear more about, or what would benefit the people in your life who you're closest to. We have more resources online. Those resources are designed to help you share this great information easily with people in your life. To access those resources, please visit tricordadvisors.com.
Often we hear from clients that they wish they had talked to us sooner. If that's you, we'd be thrilled to see how financial planning can benefit your life. Email us at contact@tricordadvisors.com or simply click on the link in the show notes.
This show was produced by Graham Gardner at Model FA. Find out more about how to create a podcast for your financial planning business by visiting modelfa.com. We love creating content that's useful, resourceful, and maybe even a little entertaining. We want to make this mega universe of financial topics and advice applicable and helpful to your life.
Remember, at Tricord Advisors, we are your future's best ally.